AITA for kicking out my girlfriend and her son after she invited her ex into our home? Me, 35M, and my GF, Sarah, 35F, have been together for 4 years. She has a son, Nathan, 9M, with her ex Mark, 36M. Sarah has full custody of Nathan with her ex, having scheduled visitations one weekend of every month. Sarah and Nathan moved in with me a little over a year and a half ago, and in my perspective, it was a little rocky at first. I've always been pretty protective of my space, so making room for 2 other people was difficult for me. When Sarah moved in with me, we agreed that the visitations for Mark would be held in our apartment as long as I'm home. The main reason I wanted this is because I don't know Mark that well, and I don't want him wandering around our apartment without me there. When we proposed this idea to Mark, he was fine with it. Now moving on to the real issue. 3 weeks ago marked 4 months since Mark's last visit, so I had asked Sarah when he was planning on visiting Nathan. My GF replied by shrugging her shoulders and telling me she'd ask. She never followed up with it. So a few days ago, I asked when Mark's next visit was, and Sarah said she'd tell me when she knew. Nathan was in the living room, but had apparently overheard us and shouted something along the lines of "Dad was here last weekend, remember?" Sarah's face immediately dropped, and when I asked what Nathan meant, she wouldn't give me a direct answer. Eventually, she ended up telling me that for the past 2 visits, Mark had been to our apartment when I was working. When I accused her of going back on our agreement, she kept telling me this was her home too, and she could invite whoever she wanted, and that it was fine because she was here and watching. I told her that was besides the point, and she violated my trust. It blew up into a huge argument with ended in me telling her to get out of my apartment. She packed up and left with Nathan. Last I heard, she was staying with her parents. I've gotten several messages from both Sarah and her parents calling me an asshole for kicking Sarah and Nathan out of their home for something so small. She's even been blasting me on Instagram and Facebook about how horrible I am to do this to her. It's got me thinking I might be the AH, but I'm not entirely sure yet. AITA? ETA. I can see why it's important, but the court order was instructed because of Mark having a criminal record. I'm not sure what it's for, as Sarah has never directly told me, and I didn't want to push her to tell me. Final update. I know it's fairly early in the morning whilst I'm posting this, but I got off the phone with my ex and figured you all deserve an update. First off, I wanted to thank all of the feedback and comments I got on my post. I didn't think it would get that much attention, but here we are. There were a lot of different opinions on who was in the wrong, but after going over a ton of them, I realized I wasn't as non-assholey as I thought. Now on to the update, as I'm sure that's what all of you came back for. It's not too exciting, so I'm sorry in advance. Firstly, on Monday, I had a locksmith come by in order to change the locks, which I got the go-ahead from my landlord, and I ordered a new door camera that should be coming in sometime next week. After that, I hadn't heard from my ex until Tuesday, when she called me from a number I didn't recognize, her mother's, in order to apologize. She started crying over the phone, begging me to take her back and that she made a mistake and how awful it was being back at her parents' house. She complained that everything was a mess and that there was a smell she hated. She even promised to never bring Mark over again as long as she could move back. I ended up telling her that she had lost my trust and that I wasn't going to move past this simply because she was having a difficult time at her parents' house. I told her this was her consequence for breaking the one thing I asked her to do when she moved in. When she realized I wasn't budging, it's like a flip had been switched. She started screaming at me, using lots of colorful language I won't be repeating here. Among the list of swears, she told me I had no right kicking her out of her home, that I was criticizing her as a parent, that I was manipulative and ignorant, and that nobody would ever love me because not even she loved me. Before she hung up, she told me she'd get me evicted and take my apartment from me. I blocked the number after. I ended up emailing my landlord in order to see if there was any way she could get me evicted. I'm not sure if I mentioned it in my post, but I've been pretty good friends with his son for a while. He ended up calling me and laughing about the whole situation, telling me that legally she has no ground to stand on since her name was never on the lease. According to him, she was simply a living guest until her name was added. Thank goodness it never was. Which brings us to earlier this morning, where my ex woke me up to call me, this time from her father's number, and repeated most of the things I listed above. Apparently, she had contacted my landlord, and he had hung up on her, Thank you, David. By the end of it, I told her to stop contacting me and that we were over for good. I blocked her father's number as well. It's not the most exciting update, as I said earlier, but it's what happened. Some people in the comments suggested I talk to my landlord, which is what I ended up doing, so thank you to those people.